Content warning. This talk has sensitive topics such as suicide and sexual assault. Please do not watch if you are sensitive to these topics. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Haswood. My pronouns are she and her. Thanks for everyone for hopping on to our community conversation. I'm incredibly excited to hear the insight of our lovely two guests here. And hear any questions that you guys have in the audience. Just so you all know, all these recordings of my community conversations on Friday are recorded, so folks who are unable to make it can tune in later. Additionally, I'd like to provide a content warning. Tonight we'll be discussing issues surrounding mental health, which I know can be a difficult subject for some. So just a trigger warning, and I will give anyone who wants to turn off their camera, change their name tags, etc., a minute to do so. For the first 30 minutes, I have some question prompts for our guests, and then for the last 20 minutes or so, we'll open it up to the audience questions. And of course, if you do have questions, feel free to put it in the chat box, and I can read it out loud, or you can read it out loud. And let's see. And if you have any questions that you want to ask the panel, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and then we'll call on you and you can ask your question. So we'll start off by having our guests introduce themselves, tell us your names, your pronouns, and what are you doing now? So we can start off with Sierra Tubles.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great. All right. Ampete washte. Good day, everybody. Lakotea oyate wawokiawi imachiapi. Na yes washichua ser tubals imachiapi. Naha chante washte nape chuzape. My Lakota name is Woman Helps Her People, but my government name is Sierra Tubles. So I greet you all with the warm handshake virtually, all on virtual. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am Oglala Lakota from the Oglala Sioux tribe, originally from the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, but living here in Lawrence, Kansas, about 8 going on 9 years now. And I'm a proud Haskell and KU alumna. So it's good to be here.
Thank you so much for being here today. And I know I saw Sierra, she shared her story in the Lawrence Journal World about a month ago for Suicide Awareness Month. And I knew I had to get in contact with her. And I also saw her on the running trail of the Kansas Half Marathon, I believe it was. So we're kind of in this like little Native women's running group in town. So thank you so much for being here. Then now we'll go to Jordan Ott.
Hello, my name is Jordan Ott. My pronouns are he and him. I'm born and raised in Lawrence, Kansas. Currently enrolled at Haskell University, taking online classes there. That's me.
Yeah, and Jordan also has put on like a suicide awareness conference for the past year or two, as well as a fun run 5K walk with it, which is really great. And your dad's amazing too. You guys are really involved with the community, so I definitely had to have you on. So first question, we'll just kind of keep this order to Sierra and Jordan. First, I'd like to hear a little bit about what got each of you involved in mental health advocacy, and you're more than welcome to share as much as you're comfortable with today. So Sierra.
Thank you, Christina. Yeah, like I didn't get to mention like what I do. So I'm a social worker at heart. I'm currently adjunct teaching at Haskell Indian Nations University, social work. So my main focus is chemical dependency in the Native American communities. And what brought me into mental health was I feel like I am a walking poster, but I shouldn't be the only. I know I'm the only one. It's impacting all of our communities, not just the Native community. But I mean, Christina mentioned the article that came out for National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and the article there. So I mentioned trauma and resilience, me being an example of that. And I know I'm not the only one. And I have dealt with my own personal experiences being a survivor of sexual assault, domestic violence, as well as attempting suicide when I was 13, what feels like forever ago. And being a survivor and realizing what saved me was my culture and traditions and being around positive people and pursuing a higher education. But and all that took place when I was a lot younger, and I'm a lot older now. And so when I got into pursuing my education, when I feel like when I got to Haskell, when I transferred to Haskell from another college, I decided to go into social work because I realized this is what my career path is going to be like. And for a while there, I was a huge advocate for domestic violence, which I still am. But I wanted to dive into more of the mental health side, especially when after I graduated from Haskell and then moved on to pursuing my master's at KU. And that first year was a huge culture shock. No matter how much I prepared for that, huge culture shock. And coming from poverty and being first generation and navigating my own way through. And so then like one of my close friends had died by suicide, and I had also loved ones that I were contemplating. So, it's just like, at the time, it's just so much going on in my life in my first year of grad school. And so, I had decided to really focus on mental health, and in suicide being a part of that, but realizing mental health is in every aspect, domestic violence, sexual assault, it impacts us in so many ways. So I feel like I've come a long way, and I'm still on my journey. I don't feel like I'm a huge expert on everything. Every day I'm learning something, especially from the youth. I'm no longer a youth. I'm looking to our youth now. Jordan is our youth here. So, okay, I think that's it.
Thank you for sharing. Your story is really, I think it helps a lot of people. And it was great to see when I read about your story too, that, sometimes if we are in that low area of mental health, that you can get out of it. And, like you said, it's an ongoing journey. So thank you so much for sharing. Now, Jordan.
What got me into mental health advocacy was not only dealing with my own issues, but before going into middle school, my 6th grade year, I lost my older brother, Isaiah, to suicide. And that's been a key point that I use as a reference to why I want to do these things, to why I want to use what I've been through or what I still go through to sort of be a voice for those that don't feel comfortable opening up about what they're going through. At a young age, dealing with those things, I was questioning things that my peers weren't. And I tended just to put my things kind of to the side just because I knew somebody else could be going through something worse, or they needed somebody, and just being able to relate on that low level, that, feeling like things aren't going okay, but sometimes we just need somebody to tell us that there is a way out, that to keep going, that we have a purpose that's bigger than ourselves. When I wanted to do the event, the Suicide Awareness Walk, I did incorporate some different factors of my culture, using the medicine wheel to determine the 4 walks, the 4 different stations. But the reason why I wanted to do that event was just seeing how big the issue has become and how almost taboo it's become. Like, it gets talked about, but then sometimes we kind of brush it under the rug, or feel like we have everything under control, or that, we do feel fine, but it can affect our everyday life. It can affect our moods, or kind of disconnect us from certain situations. And just knowing that it's okay to not be okay. Like, life is about balance, taking the good with the bad. There's always going to be another obstacle to get over, but with the right people, with the right mindset, like, anything can be accomplished. That's why I want to stay on this path, because it helps me find my purpose and keep me motivated.
Thank you, Jordan, for sharing and all the great work you've done in our community and being so young and mobilizing everyone. I know, your events were a great turnout as well. And you do bring up good points too, especially with our culture. We're all indigenous here. I think there is a lot of, don't show emotion. And even when I get into politics, some people say, don't show too much emotion because you're a young woman, or, they're not going to take you seriously. And also taboo in our culture too. I know I'm Navajo culture, you don't talk about bad things, because when you talk about it, kind of like you're kind of wishing it upon yourself. You're wishing that it will happen, kind of like manifestation. I don't know if you guys want to comment on your tribes. I think your guys' tribe's pretty similar. You don't talk about it. Yeah, did you want to comment? Jordan?
It hasn't really, I haven't really learned as much on that aspect, but just kind of in that sense, it's kind of how I grew up. Just not out of that was the right thing to do, but that's what I felt comfortable doing. Just kind of keeping things to myself, giving myself time alone to kind of process things. But sometimes we can be our own biggest enemy, and once we try to put too many things into our own minds, everything starts to make sense. Everything starts to connect. And once it gets in that negative headspace, it's rough. It's tough. And especially with how technological our world is with social media, it's hard to kind of feel confident in certain things, or something you're battling with, you see it on social media or see how somebody else is doing, but and you just start asking yourself more questions, and it's just an ongoing process.
Yeah, thank you. What about you, Sierra? Did you have a comment on kind of how our culture barriers to talking about mental health? Tribe?
Yeah, I would say it's a mix of both, of like, maybe not, there's like stories of like, or even just the saying, Wichoni Wakan, or life is sacred. The emphasis there. But the thing is, though, prior to European colonization, we didn't have, as far as I know, there's no stories of people dying by suicide, killing themselves in that way. So that is also, suicide is so new in that, I mean, it's been so hundreds of years new. And how do we go about that? Because I feel like mental health stigma coming from, if I'm seeing it from a colonial lens, it's into our communities, and around the same time as after the boarding school era. So historical trauma or intergenerational trauma with the abuse that happened with our grandparents. Like when I say grandparents, I mean my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, paternal grandparents. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. So the abuse, and then the addiction, all the other factors that are involved, even suicide, or talking about our mental health, how that all is interconnected, not being able to talk about that. And then I feel like also the history of Christianity, and how that was used as assimilation, colonization, and it was so hard for our communities to talk about that. And so I feel like in my culture, it's not just that. I mean, it's just because it's so new for us to talk about it still, even though it's been hundreds of years. But I think with the mental health stigma being a part of not being able to reach out, at least for me, when I said earlier about my Lakota culture and tradition saving me, I knew it was always there. But the thing is, in my story, I mentioned that trauma and resilience was also there. So it's like, I see my home community, in the reservation, it's just a lot of, yes, they talk about Pine Ridge as being like an example of poverty, and there's just so much like violence and substance abuse, all of that. But there's a beauty side to it. There's a beautiful side to it. We're rich in culture, and it was all that mental health stigma. Just thinking like, oh, I don't know who to talk to. I don't, that, because that stigma. Even though I did have someone to talk to, all I had to do was go to my elders, and then after my attempt, it took some time, like I would say years, before I actually said, oh, this is what happened. And they're like, how come you didn't say anything sooner? And it's because I didn't know who to talk to. So I feel like there's just not at that time, and maybe I think now it's starting to become better as the years go by, but not having a place to who are actual expert, or learning to be experts on this. And that's why I am doing what I'm doing, is I want to be that safe person someone can talk to. And of course, incorporating our Lakota culture and traditions. And I feel like that's in any Native community, it should be that way, having those intertwined, so that way it has a better connection for us to speak on our mental health in a non-judgmental, safe way. So I feel like that's a lot. I know. I'm gonna talk a lot.
No, you're doing great.
One thing.
Oh, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to mention too, I didn't get to mention earlier about all the work I do. I'm a volunteer counselor with Headquarters Counseling Center here in Lawrence. And so Headquarters being like the only national suicide prevention lifeline center. So we get local crisis calls, but we also get calls with the NSPL line. So we're taking calls all the time. And I wasn't sure if I should disclose that or not, but maybe I should, because I feel like there maybe should be more Native Americans that are getting those skills. So I have those skills. I've been having those skills for like 4 or 5 years now, learning to talk to someone that is either in crisis mode, like if they're really having depression or anxiety, but if they're also having thoughts of suicide. And I have those skills now, which I wish I had when I was younger, or I wish I knew someone that had those skills. So I feel like those are important.
I think that's really important. Considering Haskell's in my district, we did have, a couple mental health incidents happen on campus. And I believe, at times they kind of expressed on social media that they were in a dark place, and no one really knew how to go about that, or maybe the resources weren't, well known to people. I think also coming from a cultural standpoint, we just kind of get it. And we can help, our people through a tough time. Thank you for sharing. So Jordan, you kind of answered this about unique challenges you think Indigenous peoples go through. What do you think other challenges that we as Indigenous people have in getting mental health care that they need? I guess kind of saying what's different maybe from our care, because when I think of that question, I think of cultural competency, and we require that culturalness, because not only is it helps us. Can you think of any more challenges maybe with our Indigenous communities?
Definitely kind of not knowing where the resources are, or not feeling like we're not necessarily not comfortable, but that we're in a good spot now, that we might not need to go to therapy, or we might not need to just go find somebody to talk to about that. And especially Native Americans, are among the highest along suicide rates. And that could be just from different living conditions on reservations, you know, how substance use is there, how not many resources as there would be, you know, here in Lawrence, Kansas, where things are available at Bert Nash headquarters, or when those students from the reses, when they come to Haskell or come to Lawrence, you know, it's sort of like there's a disconnect from Haskell to the actual Lawrence community, even though Haskell is within 10 to 5 minutes from KU campus and from downtown. So a lot of students, you know, may feel encouraged to go back home, or feeling like they don't fit in. And that's kind of how it is for not just Native youth, but just a lot of youth now going through school. Just that, oh, I don't fit in. Why don't I fit in? Kind of asking yourself those questions. And, you know, sometimes that's not even the reality of it, but we just get in that mindset and that mood to where it affects our days. You know, sometimes there is a friend that might need us, or a situation that we might be really interested in, but we're not fully invested into it just because we're battling our own things. And along with different challenges, is just kind of battling ourselves. And, you know, that's kind of I said it earlier, but yeah, that's our biggest enemy.
And you just graduated high school, is that right? Do you feel like there was more resources? Lawrence High, correct?
I went there for 3 years, but I actually finished my senior year out in Oklahoma, a small school called Preston.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But, yeah.
Do you feel like, I don't know if you can remember back to Lawrence High days, but was there more resources towards the Lawrence High community in comparison to the Haskell community? Or do you feel like there was still a disconnect?
I would say it's kind of a disconnect. You know, the schools, they would have, or certain teachers, they would talk about it. You know, we have counselors there at the school. Like there are resources. There's always somebody to talk to. But it's kind of just breaking that barrier of going to go get that help, going to go find who it is, or just being willing to open up about it. Just not knowing where to go, or how to deal with it. But yeah, just kind of Lawrence High days. I was dealing with a lot of things myself, but I knew that other students were kind of doing that thing, or maybe feeling the same way, or the same thing could be affecting them, or we could be going through two totally different situations, but the way it affected us, our emotions, our feelings could be similar, to where, you know, you could still relate to them, to where you could still make them feel comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing. I think that is the most daunting part, is that first step on who do I go, where is it located at, if it's with the school, or, you know, do you even have health insurance? Is your parents' health insurance covered, or are you uninsured? Or does IHS have a counselor to talk to you? Can you schedule out that far? There's so many barriers within the mental health care system as well. And Sierra, do you think, you know, what unique challenges do you think Indigenous people have in getting mental health care, the help that they need? And I think you can talk, you know, reservation, Lawrence.
Yeah, well, as Jordan was saying, I think most of that is pretty much similar, especially for the reservation side, depending on where you're at, because most reservations are geographically isolated, like mine, up there in the southwestern side of South Dakota. And so we like an hour and 15 minutes away is Rapid City, kind of close to where Mount Rushmore is, given anyone that's never been to South Dakota a visual there. So we are very isolated. And so we already have our problems of like funding, there's high unemployment rates. There's not enough job security, housing, you name it. We have a lot of high substance abuse rates, suicide, and there's just like not the feeling of disparity and all that. There's just so much contributing factors there. Not having that access, like we do have IHS, but as you mentioned, the mental health care system in general is it definitely needs to be improved on, especially for our Native communities. So there's that barrier. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the mental health stigma, that first, just having to talk about it, making that first step. And then, so thinking about the Lawrence side or just the urban side of things, since I would consider myself urban now, living off reservation, seeing both sides of it. What Jordan mentioned, like that disconnect, like I remember when I first moved here 8 years ago and just being so new to this place, and took a while for me to get really involved with the Lawrence community. And I felt that I didn't feel too welcomed at first, just because of like, I felt really safe on the Haskell campus. And it was just, I felt it's just like that anywhere, like a predominantly white a white town or city, it's going to feel that way. And so it took some time getting kind of networking, connecting with people that have been here longer, who've lived here. And I think that speaks to just those who are involved in the community. And that's was thinking like, wow, I didn't realize until maybe a few years back, like, that's why I go to these events. Like, of course, I like to learn new things and maybe be that person to go to. And not just me, I mean, I'm hoping other people get involved. So that way someone knows, like someone that comes here, a student that comes from a different tribe, they move here, or maybe that'll help them reach out and want to be, where I'm trying to go with this. Basically, I'm saying is that I would love to see more Native people in those spaces, like especially in a mental health care system. Like my ultimate career goal is to be a therapist. I'm still working my way there. Would love to be a therapist and maybe open up my own place one day. I'm not there yet, but to be that face, be that person, knowing that there is a Native person in those spaces, because I would love that. If I was an undergrad at Haskell, going out in the community, if I saw a Native person at the hospital, that would have been much more. I mean, I would love that. Or whenever I was in grad school at KU years ago, and going to the student psychological services and seeing a Native person there. You know what I mean? So it's just like having that representation and visibility is huge. It's so important. And that even also is connected with having, I feel like that's a resiliency factor that we need, a strength that we need as in our Native population, both urban and on reservations.
I strongly relate to the KU counseling services. I went during grad school because I was the first, both my sides of my family go to grad school, and it was a tremendous amount of pressure. And I went to the KU medical campus, which if you look at those racial statistics, there's only about 10 natives and 5 of them who like come to me and say, I'm Native. I don't know where the other 5 were. But, those therapists, there was no natives there. Luckily, there was an African-American woman there, and she ran a women of color group where we all had a safe space each week to sit down and talk about microaggressions in the academic world, especially African-American, girls with curly textured hair kind of getting discriminated a bit in their practices when they're in med school or in pharmacy school. saying that it's not really professional. A lot of these issues that really hurt the mental health side. It's really great to see people of color get into these professions and create these safe space for us. So I sympathize with that. And, you know, thank you, Sierra. And Jordan, Sierra kind of went into this, but what would you like to see change in the Douglas County in regards to mental health in our community?
Just more, I guess, promotion, more awareness, providing more accessibility to those that don't feel comfortable or feel more comfortable just being isolated or being alone. You know, there's always somebody out there with a struggle. You know, Lawrence is a pretty packed community, and you could just walk down the street and you don't know who could be contemplating different things, who could be going through something. We have headquarters, Burton Ash. There's different outlets out there, but with new faces coming in every year, new students, or people moving in, not knowing where to go, just making it more accessible to building that bridge, or incorporating more natives, involving Haskell more with these community events, community things, you know, because typically first go-to is always Kansas, and you know, that's fine and all. That's a big population of our community, but Haskell is a big population of that diversity, the Native community. There's a lot of voices there that have seen all different types of trauma back home, or could be going through things here. Building that bridge between both of those could be really beneficial. More stories, more voices, more perspectives, and just more perspectives that leads to more solutions, better solutions. And it builds a stronger bond within the community, just because how diverse it is in culture.
Yes, I like that answer. We got to diversify our solutions to mental health. And then you brought up another great point too, which I think is kind of an issue in our community, is that Haskell seems to be placed as the hub for all natives in the Lawrence area, which Haskell and IHS is supposed to serve the students, but I feel like they don't have the capacity to serve, you know, our elderly and those who are at KU and all these other people, especially, you know, Kansas City has a good native population as well. I don't know if you feel that way too, where, you know, everyone turns to Haskell, but Haskell's university, not the community center. So for me, I would love to see a community health center for us, or some type of community center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just more awareness about it, just more, you know, because sometimes if I see a certain post on this Tuesday, it wouldn't resonate as well if I'm kind of in a negative space on the Thursday. So kind of just more promotion of it could kind of entice more people to go find that balance, go find that help.
Definitely. And probably normalizing that process too, when you're out of balance, to take care of yourself and to seek that within yourself. Because I feel all too often we want to take care of others before we take care of ourselves. And I think that's a native teaching too. I feel like we kind of have, is that we always take care of our families and our parents and our little siblings and our cousins and our aunties. We go out there, we get an education, we get a job, but we always forget to take care of ourselves because we have this load of responsibilities, it seems like. But yeah, thank you. So the next question, What would you like to see from the Kansas State House in the next legislative session in regards to mental health? And if you're not well versed in Kansas State House politics, I would just say in politics in general, what would you guys like to see proposed, maybe in law, or more funding to resources, or maybe a task force on Indigenous mental health? We'll start with Sierra.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, just wondering, 'cause it said it was unstable there for a second. So I am not well versed as I should be, but I know a little bit of what's kind of going on. I mean, as far as funding and legislation goes. So I think last year is when there was the suicide prevention task force that was like some bill, and I can't remember the name of it, that just having a more of a coordinator involved. So, but I do would like to see more of the overall. I just want to see more inclusion of our Native population, and I'm talking in general, just the within the tribes, more collaboration with the tribes that are here in Kansas. So the 4 tribes, then they have their reservations, and then of course in the urban area, and then for here in Lawrence. So funding is always going to be a huge thing, right? It's always a factor, having more funding, because I remember years ago, while I was doing my practicum in my last year of grad school for social work, we were on the brink of, headquarters was on the brink of about to be shut down, just because we didn't have a lot of funding. And that was in the news years ago. And so not having that funding really put us at risk of like, wow, we're the only national suicide prevention lifeline center too. And so as if that was to be shut down, then the trickle effect that would happen, the impact that would happen. So, and I know I understand it's very hard for to divvy up the funding to nonprofits, but at that time I really saw the side of it, the things of like, wow, the funding part. I felt like mental health being is still stigmatized, that it was kind of put at the back burner. Like, we'll send money, but it's going to take a while. So that, I feel like a push for that, and then Native inclusion, push for more cultural competency. I feel like that's just it kind of is a buzzword among social workers, like having more non-Native therapists and social workers in any setting to have more training on not only the history, but contemporary issues that impact our Native populations. And I honestly think that they should be hiring more natives too in those positions, even though our population is so small in the mental health side of things. But just it goes back to that representation too. But legislation, just seeing more inclusion, I would say. I'm trying to think more here on top of my head.
That's good. Yeah. That's great ideas. That's a lot of great ideas. You should come to the State House.
Right? Yes. And I've seen improvement there with like, even on like Native women, the what was it? Also with the school education side of it, the
like allowing us to wear feathers.
Yes, allowing that. Because I have family members living off the reservation who experienced that, and I didn't experience that, because being on the reservation, I was fortunate to be at a school where that was allowed. And I'm like, this should be allowed for all of us as Native people. And then it speaks to the youth, like our representation, our culture identity. And one thing too, maybe for legislation, now that I'm thinking about it, mascot issues. We need something put in for all schools across across Kansas to get rid of the name or mascots, just because, I mean, we've seen the effects. There's studies out there, research that shows that it impacts our well-being, our mental health. And I mean, unfortunately, money talks. So, I mean, that's what happened with the Washington football team. Finally, I mean, it took money to do that. I mean, but it was huge advocacy for many years. So I feel like we need something that in that capacity on the upper level in the government we need to stop that. Like, if they're not gonna, schools are gonna do it themselves, then there needs to be something more pushed to that.
Yes,
yeah.
that's definitely one of them that I feel passionate about. Thank you for sharing such great ideas. What about you, Jordan? What do you think? If you're well versed in Kansas politics, if not, just any type of politics. So, a couple ideas is, more representation in these decision-making skills, more funding, maybe a new program. What do you think?
Definitely, yeah, more indigenous representation. Just because, some natives really do feel comfortable opening up to another native, or there could be a relation built like, oh yeah, my grandma, she came from that res, like, so I'm familiar with that environment, so I know how you could be feeling. But definitely more representation, but also more advocacy and more of a push towards the youth, just because how fast everything is developing now, the situation the world's been put in with this pandemic, it's rough. I know it can be rough for someone who's growing up, someone who's developing, someone who's already trying to find their identity, who they want to be, but there's things hindering that. The whole thing with the suicide awareness walk that I did, the funds, that was all donated to a local nonprofit, the Landon Lucas Foundation, and what they have is a scholarship to cover sports fees for underprivileged youth. Sports in general, sports to me was very therapeutic, and there's many different things that are therapeutic to all different types of youth, whether it be music or dancing or video games. Like, there's other outlets to benefit mental health rather than just talking about mental health in general. And different, maybe programs or that, or more work involved in the schools to focus more on that, I think would be very beneficial. Just different things along that line. I'm not, very familiar with the politics surrounding that, but just growing up in the community here, playing at some of those schools like Shawnee Mission North, where they did have a Native American mascot for the longest. But yeah, playing there and seeing a team of white kids wearing uniforms that say the tribe, and a gymnasium with arrowheads and chiefs painted all around the gym, not necessarily just not making me feel uncomfortable, but more angry, like just like it's not right. I don't have any problems personally, with the Chiefs, but now they're finally starting to address these things. But it's not necessarily, it does come down to the names, but it comes down to the almost mockery of our culture. Fans showing up with different face paints, fans showing up with headdresses or different war chants, it goes deep, deeper than the actual name itself. And it almost kind of puts the Native at a divide with its own community, with its schools.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a couple things to add. You said a lot of great things. Definitely, and you guys both mentioned both getting natives into these types of positions. I know the first time I ever sought counseling was in college at Haas School, and the counselor was a native woman. And I went in there because I got my heart broken, and I was just ultimately crushed. Lowest point of my mental health when I was a young woman. And she sat down and said, you're a native woman, right? You're going to be a little hard to deal with because you're so, you're so always wanting to do great for yourself. And, that might be a little hard for people. I was like, oh, okay. Like, she talked to me like an auntie. And I think that's our cultural way is, they kind of give it to you cut and dry, but it's with love. You always know it's with love. And you mentioned the school, Shawnee Mission North. When I was at Lawrence High, I had the similar experience as you, but we were at a basketball tournament and they did like the little this thing and before their pregame warm up, and there was I think 5 of us native girls on the basketball team at Lawrence High, and seeing that we weren't like necessarily, I guess, enraged because at the time, this was like 2011, 2012, we didn't really know what was going on, but it just felt wrong. And then we went back into the locker room before we would come back out and, do warm-ups and all that. And we're just like, ew, like, why do they have to do that? Why is the whole school like that? And then, thinking about that, how it plays into other Indigenous youth growing up in these urban environments and, how that puts in our mental health as well. Just wanted to share that similar experience in sports too with Kansas high school teams, and it was just a weird feeling.
Definitely. Like, it's, not feeling necessarily enraged, but feeling like it wasn't right, or there's fans there, or just the team, them being that mascot, just knowing that we're native, it's just like sometimes feeling like they are being not judging us, or looking at us like we're a mascot, even though we are a real person, we are there. Just because, it wouldn't be right, to name a team anything else involving any other races, but Native Americans are always first to go as a mascot, whether it be Chiefs, Warriors, Indians. There's even a school that was in Oklahoma that still used Savages. Like Redskins. There's so many different names that they can use involved with our culture, but it's kind of disrespecting it.
Yeah, definitely. We're all getting into the academic side of things of providing the resources of what Western society needs to change it. But yeah, great conversation. I think we could talk about the mascot like all night long.
Yeah.
So we have a couple questions from the audience before we wrap up. So Sierra, are community mental health services in Lawrence working towards cultural competency? Where we're going to the same place. So do you feel like here in Lawrence, cultural competency is happening?
Well, can't speak for any organization, but from what I see, it looks like they're trying based on what they're posting, especially with the climate right now going on, not just with the COVID pandemic or COVID-19 pandemic, but also just, I would personally say, in my opinion, it's also there's a racist pandemic going on. It's been going on for years, but so with the tensions there, you see organizations talking about their solidarity. And so it's like, okay, that's great. You're talking about solidarity and wanting to be there for Black, Indigenous people of color. And so I see it being announced, but as far as like implementing it, like taking it into action, because that's where it's like you're gonna talk the talk, you gotta walk the walk. So from what I've seen, what I see, like when I'm volunteering my time Yeah, you can see there's steps, slowly steps making the for the inclusion, for the culture competency. It's gonna take a while though. It's like those baby steps, I would say. It's happening slowly. Sorry, I wish I had more of an answer for that.
That's good. That's good to report back that, you know, it's there, it's happening, but more progress is needed. So thank you. What do you think, Jordan? Do you think, you know, our mental health community is working towards cultural competency? Do you feel like that's being achieved, or still work needs to be done?
Yeah, there's always more room for more work. I think it is being put on I guess blast right now, just because of everything the world is going through. You know, it's it was like the underlying focus. Like that's what needs to be put into these things. And it would also help just bring in more people, or bring in more people from different cultures, different backgrounds, going different things, feeling more inclined to go get help, or knowing that their friend or family member could be going through those things. Incorporating more of that is, I see it just benefits from it. More culturally accepting. You know, sometimes around different communities, some people may feel not, I don't know what the word for it, or may not feel comfortable expressing their culture, or just out of fear that they'll be judged or looked at. But yeah, I do see more of a push for that. But you know, there's always room for more growth, no matter how much work can be done. You know, just keep on pushing for more. Brings in more people, and it's a never-ending chain. You know.
Thank you so much for sharing. I definitely agree. You know, always more work to be done. And sometimes I wish maybe we had a pipeline program for more Indigenous peoples to be these types of therapists and counselors getting their masters in social work as well. We have one more question. Sierra, what mental health services available at IHS Clinic here? Or do you know if the referrals are going to Bert Nash?
As far as I know, yes, those referrals are still going to Bert Nash. And if it's also there's I think they're also being like referred to at headquarters, like if so like the crisis line is 24/7 free and confidential. So as we spoke earlier about the mental health care system being sometimes you won't see a therapist for a while. It takes a while in between seeing a therapist. You can always call that, and I feel like they're getting referred there too. Yeah, the IHS, so even that IHS and the other mental health centers in the community definitely need that more of that what I'm talking about, the collaboration, the connection there. So yeah.
Thank you. And Jordan, do you have anything to add to that? The mental health services here with IHS and maybe Bert Nash?
Definitely, just because I can relate personally to that. Recently, you know, moving back to Lawrence, I was kind of in a tough spot just mentally. You know, it's sort of a different look at the world after you graduate, a different view of everything. You know, going through high school, sometimes we're not really prepared for that. And for a while, I put off going to therapy just because I felt comfortable without it, or keeping things to myself, you know, or I just felt comfortable being that helping person for my peers, and that kind of helped me with my things, but I did recently, go find therapy at Bert Nash, talk to them, met in person, then later on had a session over a Zoom call, but um, just, yeah, the like scheduling, just in a rough spot, kind of had to wait a few weeks till I actually got to go in. And then a few more weeks, wait. There is kind of problems there, with the scheduling and things, but all of it can be worked out. There's always a way to find what fits best for those. But yeah, I see progress going. They've adapted really well to everything with this pandemic.
Thank you for sharing your personal, mental health journey going on right now, especially during this tough time, and really sharing about the process of a Haskell student when I and then getting back to Bert Nash. I know I did like one counseling session on Zoom versus in person. It's a lot different. I don't know. This was like at the end of my grad school. Even counseling too. I was like in one of the weight loss like research programs at my grad school, and then they had me seek a counselor as part of the program. I was like, why do I need to seek a counselor that I want to lose weight? Like, it's to help with your relationship with food. So I always had this misconception that you have to be in a certain distress to seek counseling, and that's not the case. But I just want to end on a happy note, positive note. So one more round. We're going to start with Sierra. What are some things that you do, especially during this tough time, to uplift your spirits and take care of your mental health? And give some tips to all of us.
Yes. Thank you for asking that. Self-care is important. I know it's a buzzword in social work, but it really is true. And I always like, what's self-care? What is that? What is that? Caretaking? What? And I kind of over the years learning like, what does that mean? And how do I even go about that? So, I mean, with the COVID pandemic increasing my stress and anxiety, it's like an added factor. And it's like, what do I do? So I've actually gotten out more with the running, and Christina, you mentioned us, like how we connected there with our half marathon last year. So running is medicine. Oh, I love it. There's a runner's high, y'all. So running, yoga has been a huge part of my life. Yoga, running, also just biking. I've been biking a lot too. That really helps. Like, and my body would tell me, my body's so used to telling me now. It's like, oh, you've been inside, online, work. You need to get out, get off the couch, go outside. Even just being outside for 30 minutes, if I'm not doing any of those other activities, then just walking, grounding myself really helped with my anxiety. Because a decade ago I had an anxiety attack, and so I had to learn like what's working for me. And there's different types of levels of self-care. I mean, it's just a buzzword. People, when we say that, it's like, what does that mean? So like with self-care, that you can break it down as far as physical self-care. So like the biking, the running, yoga, or exercising, other types, weightlifting. But also for me too, like when the pandemic is going on right now, I can't dance necessarily at powwows, but be among my people, but I still jam out to powwow music and do my own dancing at home. And we got the social distance powwow online too. Also with physical self-care, really it's all about releasing that tension in our bodies. I mean, I feel it always in my shoulders. So if you catch yourself like this, you can feel it, like you just breathing, all of that. So there's others. There's also mental side of it, the mental self-care, like looking at engaging with your mind and really thinking, like even just talking. I know we're going through a pandemic and social isolation is real. We need to be in a virtual space like this, or talking to family and peers virtually, seeing their faces. And if you're social distancing outside, having that conversation outside. So that's the mental health side of it. Journaling and writing has helped as well. And And then reflective type self-care, I would say would be meditation. I'm still learning more about that. It's really helped out. I did this type of meditation where it actually put me to sleep. I was out for a half hour and I really needed it. It felt so good. So those have been helping me. And I mentioned all that, but sometimes I can get stuck in a rut myself, and I have to push myself, like, just get outside, take your shoes off, put your feet on the ground. And it really helps, like grounding. I mean, it's our land, right? That's Mother Earth. Put your feet there. So if it's one thing you should take away, is that if you not really a runner, biker, yoga, or any of those, maybe just walking, simply walking, and put your feet on the ground. Take your shoes off, put your feet on the ground. Our ancestors always had it right. Moccasins, when we had that, those are breathing. So we are always connected to Mother Earth. And if you take off those, of course, you'll be grounded, with your feet on the earth. So Kilama Yaya, I appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing. Those were great tips, great teachings with it. You're very wise. All right, next we'll go to Jordan. What are some things that have been, uplifting your spirits? What are some tips and tricks for all of us, and what you do to keep your mental health back up?
Definitely, meditation. That's something I've really become invested in, just because sometimes, how I talked about how our own mind can be our biggest enemy. I ran into that problem too. Just being at home, all of our daily routines being messed up, just being left alone at home with ourselves, sometimes with these thoughts. It's hard to shake those things. But meditating, like yoga, I'm only 18, but I feel like I have the body of someone way older. But that stretching really helps. But yeah, just getting outside, just being in the sun, that we get our energy from the sun. We get a lot of life. That's what brings life. But just going out for different walks. I started skateboarding, just being outside, or I'll go and just sit by different bodies of water that we have here in Lawrence, different ponds, lakes, and just, sometimes just talk. Sometimes, people like, oh, that person's talking to themselves, they must be crazy. But it also is a mental thing, talking and verbalizing those things, hearing it from yourself can change a whole perspective or change your mood. Definitely. Or other self-care things that I've been doing is just treating myself to whatever I feel like in the mood for. Like, okay, I finished this class today. I worked hard on this. I did this. You know what? Let me go get this donut. Let me go get an ice cream, or let me take the time to watch this movie. Or there's many different ways of self-care, and each one is different for everybody. But just finding what works best for you. So yeah, sometimes it's I'll just hop in the car, do a cruise around town, listening to music, and then come back home, and I feel a lot better. But there's, or reading, different readings, just finding other ways to fill up your time, especially with me, taking a break from social media. That was tough, but it felt good, kind of just disconnect from that and reconnect kind of with my surroundings and with myself. The last thing that I'll probably end on, besides going out and talking to nature, would just be talking to myself in the mirror with just positive reaffirmation, kind of encouraging myself through that, and reminding myself, becoming more comfortable with was myself.
That is a great one to end on, especially being 18 and you're an adult. I don't know if you're in the dorm or you got your apartment or what's going on over there, but you're now just starting to, I guess, see how you function by yourself, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pandemic. Yeah, I think everyone had great tips. I think we had a great conversation. I think for me, especially being new into politics, one of the biggest things that I did is praying and giving gratitude. In my culture, my Navajo Diné culture, every morning we would come up, me and my mom would wake up and we would get up a little bit before the sun, and then we would pray to the sun to the east as the sun was rising. And this is a traditional practice within our tribe, and she would help me along with it, and she would start to tell me what exactly to say, and sometimes in English, sometimes in Navajo. But we usually prayed a couple times a week just because of the emotional stress of a political campaign. But now it's something that has instilled in me. Anytime I feel nervous or scared or just uncertain with myself, it's just practice I can go back to, and it's something that is indigenous to us and culture, and it just feels right. I don't know how else to say it. If it's part of our culture, it just feels right. But yeah, I appreciate everybody for coming on today. In conclusion, I'm so thankful for Sierra Two Bulls and Jordan Ott for being here today. This was in light of Suicide Awareness Month in September. And when I read Sierra's article in the paper, it reminded me, we lost one too many classmates, friends, family to suicide. And I think normalizing and destigmatizing mental health in the conversation is just extremely important. And I learned a lot from all of you, especially everyone's questions. I'm having these types of conversations almost every Friday at 6 p.m. with different community members. Our next conversation will be with our labor leaders on Friday, October 2nd. More information about our next conversation will be posted on my social medias at Haswood4KS. So make sure to look out for that. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any other ideas or information on how I can be helpful to you all. Again, thank you so much for hopping on. Take care, have a nice evening, and wear a mask. Thank you so much. Bye.
Wopila tanka.